Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great time. I would like to thank EC Council for this opportunity. Well, it's truly a privilege to be part of this great thought leadership series and be able to share my knowledge and experience with this audience. So, just for the ease of understanding, I've broken down the session in a much simpler form. We will first begin with defining what threat intelligence is, and then going further to do a reality check of whether today's threat intelligence programs are really effective, and if not, what's not working. We will then finally wrap up the session with learning the strategy on how to create an actionable threat intelligence program, and we'll also look at some guidance and blueprint. So without any further delay, let's just get started. So what is threat intelligence? Well, it actually depends upon who you're asking. While we have industry analysts and security vendors defining it in their own way, but what is truly important to note is that there is a high acceptance today of the fact that threat intelligence is increasingly becoming important and playing a greater role in achieving cyber resilience. So when I use the term intelligence, I actually use it to describe the analysis and evaluation of data pertaining to cyber threats and the assessments we make based on a combination of data, people, and technology. So what I essentially mean is that in the context of cybersecurity, it is about evidence-based knowledge of an emerging or an existing threat that can be used to make informed decisions about how to. You need cyber threat intelligence. Well, cyber threat intelligence is essential. If we look at today, the evolving and future threat landscape is composed of professional attackers with persistent tactics and sophisticated tools. And believe me, this reality won't de-escalate anytime soon. The global threat landscape is vibrant and it's actually rapidly maturing. The bad guys don't pay attention to borders. So cyber threat intelligence, when in the hands of cybersecurity team, can actually help organizations take actions to protect their critical assets. And in the boardroom and on the battlefield, cyber threat intelligence provides leaders with the context and with which they can make some strategic decisions and possibly future investments. Since we talk about emerging threats, so let's just understand who these threat actors are and possibly their course of action. So if you look at the life cycle of a threat begins with the recon, which is truly important to gain an understanding about the target and have some intelligence to develop attack scenarios and identify what works best in the target threat surface. So once an attacker has developed the attack scenarios and exploit approaches, they will find their way in by manipulating users, exploiting vulnerabilities in systems, and so on. Now, during this stage, when they start exploring the targeted area, or you can call them as crown jewels, if they find any motivation to stay longer, they will stay. And if that compromise isn't detected, they will take increasing control over the environment and possibly move laterally towards their target, possibly taking control over the accounts and systems until they actually attain their target, where the biggest damage is done: exfiltration, corruption, disruption, etc. So if we can stop the attackers after the initial compromise, we can definitely prevent the damaging breach. So let's just look at the value of threat intelligence. Well, threat intelligence brings the value at both strategic and tactical levels. When I say at a tactical level, it actually helps with proactively detecting or defending attacks before they happen. At the operational level, it actually helps organization with improved situational awareness, improved internal security systems, reduced incident response time through contextualization of the event, and then intelligence stored in the knowledge portal. And obviously, a much more intelligence driven patch management process, which is really very essential. Now, at a strategic level, if we look at it, is an improved organizational situational awareness. It's not about only the technical aspect, but now executives, the senior leadership can understand the relevant threats and appropriately allocate the resources where necessary. It also provides an improved internal and external communication with top executives, possibly with board members, and about the risk to the business, the probable actions of adversaries in the future, and the return of investment which they are putting into the security budgets. So now the burning question is, if threat intelligence is so imperative for achieving cyber resilience and organizations are really spending billions of dollars into security budget, then why today these programs fail? Let's also look at what's not working. So let's do some reality check. The global cybersecurity spend today is reaching $130 billion. But unfortunately, we still hear breaches in the media now every day. Well, the problem is that the spend is largely on the pointed solution, possibly to do the right job, but unfortunately, what we end up doing is just creating some more threat data sources. These threat data sources are not interconnected, and when you do not have an interconnected architecture, obviously the contextualization becomes impossible. That is very well needed to create an intelligence that can be communicated and shared across various stakeholders to make informed decisions. What this leads to is that the decision making and prioritization happens in isolation without having the complete context of the problem. So in a nutshell, largely today's defense in depth approaches still remains a siloed philosophy. Well, let's take a look at it more deeply. If we just step back and analyze some of the biggest breaches in the past, they all had well-funded security budgets, had great product lines to defend, and also had staff to maintain a security posture. So why did they got breached? Well, firstly, well-funded doesn't mean well-defended. The good thing about the pointed solutions or the product is that they are mature in doing what they're supposed to do. They do provide enough data for anyone to consume. But look at a situation where you have numerous threat data sources and each of them expecting an analysis. This actually creates a lot of data noise, and most of the time analysts will fail to recognize the real threat. These, my friend, is what I call a false sense of security. So now it's very important to look at what we are doing with this pointed solutions. We really need to look at the difference between threat data versus threat intelligence. So there is a very clear distinction between threat data and threat intelligence. When we talk about threat data, you have multiple vendors that provide threat, data feeds, which with a very limited context and often, with actually no analysis. These feeds can sometimes be helpful, but they can also have multiple issues. Which could be, it is always one-dimensional. There is a narrow collection focus. There is no or limited validation analysis. Very high noise to signal. Obviously, many false positive. There is a lot of increased alerts, which possibly lead to a lot of wasted efforts. And obviously, it's a data which has a little or no prioritization context. What threat intelligence is, in contrast, is it provides you very rich contextual information. And with that, it also provides you an actionable aspect. So now that we have covered the what and why, let's look at how you can achieve an actionable intelligence and where you need to begin. So before we dig into that, let's just understand what an actionable intelligence is. Well, I've got a definition on the screen right now, which is by Forrester, but I'll give you mine, which is, to me, an intelligence to be an actionable, it really has to be timely, has to be accurate, has to be relevant and specific, has to be aligned with your intelligence requirement, has to be predictive and tailored. These are some of the attributes that provide an actionability to any intelligence. So how should an organization strategize to make intelligence actionable? Well, there are various ways you can do that, but what it takes is it takes a lot of motivation and will, and obviously the senior leadership's trust and commitment to do that. Any organization should actually start with enabling a holistic shift from technology-based decisions to threat-based decisions. What I mean in that sense is that whatever you do, have a threat aspect to it. Put the threat aspect back into the risk equation. That is more important. Add a context and prioritization to every technical environment and observation. It is very crucial you do that. Redefine the workflows from being reactive to highly proactive. And then finally, ensure there is an enterprise-wide connectedness and sharing. Sharing is truly important in the sense that, once you define what you're gathering and collecting and analyzing, you can create a central repository where you can have all the threat intel that can be easily shared with the relevant stakeholders and even with the communities that require. And once you do that, there is other aspect to it that you should also look at, is that what I just mentioned would actually require you to really know your environment very well, in terms of your assets, your infrastructure, your personnel, your business operations, your weakness and entry points. And once you create a threat intel, you should know how to apply threat intelligence, where to apply, which possibly when I talk about that is basically your capabilities. And then how and who to communicate to. That's very important. And then the sharing strategy. What you need to do is to define the sharing strategy, which can be based on different parameters. Could be what you're trying to share, whether it is sanitized. You should have a targeting sharing model. You should provide a unique data, easily ingestible, concise, and clear. And obviously, one of the other aspects that we talked about earlier as well is has to be real time. So this guidance that you're looking today is actually a result of a lot of experience that I had with working on some of the large threat intelligence programs. So what happens is you start with planning, basically establishing the priority intelligence requirement and link it to the possible adverse reactions, both strategic and tactical, with the assets that can collect on or mitigate adverse reactivities. Then you collect data from internal sources, such as your SOC alerting, any external sources, such as stakes and taxi or IOC feeds. You can also look at the indicators from open, deep, dark web, and technical and political open sources. Then you process them to normalize, create trends, summarize, adjudicate for validity, and then provide context to raw data in preparation for further analysis. When you do an analysis, try and utilize a tiered construct focusing on near real-time monitoring. Try and focus on the larger operational picture of adversity, the tactical maneuvers. Then you can also focus on some of the advanced analysis, which includes activities such as threat actor profiling, attack attribution analysis, and threat enrichment, which is through in-depth research and analysis of IOC and deep dives into malware attack pattern. And finally, dissemination. Ensure that the actionable intelligence reaches decision makers and all the other teams as appropriate via predefined production or dissemination cycle. So let's now take a look at the blueprint that you can use to achieve an actionable intelligence. Well, the slide is pretty much self-explanatory, but the focus that I really want to put across is to have decision makers, information with the context or intelligence with the context that they need at the technical, strategic, and operational levels to make actionable assessments. The intent for threat intelligence is to be actionable and provide security teams with the intelligence and context which is necessary to deal with security incidents and understand what threats may be coming down the pipe. It is the relevant threat data and analysis integrated with analytical tools to help identify, prioritize, and respond to high priority threats. This context and analysis actually augments the alerts security teams get from their various appliances. So, just to wrap up, achieving actionable threat intelligence requires organizations to centralize access to intelligence, perform rigorous attribution and track the threat groups, provide context to cyber events so that it can enhance your corporate knowledge, and disseminate, which essentially means that you can share and disseminate intelligence to business units and clients and customers or community to take the real actions that are necessary. Well, thank you so much and appreciate for participating in this Cyber Talk series. I hope this was informative and provided some understanding that you can take away today. The session is now open for Q&A. Well, your feedback is really important, so feel free to share that across. Thank you.